My name is Dick Mavis, and I'm currently chair of the Knox County Sports Hall of Fame. I have some people I want to introduce, our committee members. John Lambert. John Lambert was from the Centerburg area, but I call him our chief researcher. Paul Hynum could not be here today. Paul's a Mount Vernon man, Toledo sports guy, and very successful coach. Could not be here. Chet Looney is here. Chet's a Danville player, East Knox coach, and been very good member of our committee. And Jim Wagner. Jim is Fredericktown, community activist, I call him, historian. If you want to know anything about Fredericktown, Jim has an answer. And then David Greer. David Greer's from Danville. He is a sports enthusiast, educator, Ohio State fan, about a fan of anything sport-minded. He's also very knowledgeable of the operation of the computer. He did all of our balloting and the tabulations because we, as you might figure, we had more candidates than we had places. We started out with 60 people on the ballot. We voted, it went down to about 30, then it went down to 18. The previous committee, which operated in 2019, named 7 people. If you were back to see the display back there, there was a group of 7 in that one. When we started out, we thought that would be good. One of the reasons is that Jim Gibson, our director of the museum, thought that was a good number to have in our display area. But as it turned out, we had a vote that was very close, and so we selected 8 people in this year's class. Phil Hobler could not be here today. John's going to talk about Phil in a moment. But in 2022, I was asked to be a member of the board of this museum. While I was there, Phil, who was a long-time member of the board, came up and said, you know, I can't do this. As a matter of fact, a couple of those members of the committee had passed away. Asked if I would. So that's how we got started. That's what brings us here today. And with that, John Lambert.
Thank you, Dick, and welcome. It's exciting for me because I've loved sports from the time I had memory, I guess. I don't know, a young child. Only books I read in the library were those little orange books that were sports stars, you know, Joe Louis and all those guys that they wrote books about. And so I can say this with a clear conscience. The 8 individuals that we are inducting today are among the greatest athletes that ever performed in Knox County. And if you want to know how they got here, you open up the back of the book, and the second page there from the back tells you the qualifications. You know, hey, a lot of guys said I was good in high school. Yeah, well, a lot of people were. Were you great? Well, I don't know how you define that. Did you set any records? Were you all-state? Did you win championships? Did you go to college? Did you set any records there? Were you any good? Did you make the team? Did you make all-league? Did you sign a professional contract? All of these individuals today qualified based upon those things. And anybody wants to argue about it, I'll be glad to argue. Phil Hobler is an individual I wished everybody could have met today. His wife is ill. He had to be with her. I can't remember if Phil is 93 or 94 now. He seems like he's in his early 70s. His eyes light up. He was a car dealer here in the 60s. I don't know if they hypnotized my father or drugged him. He was just a worker at Pittsburgh Plate, but Dad came home driving a huge 1963 Olds 98, as big as Oldsmobile they made back then. And that was Phil Hogan that did that. And so Phil left us about 10 years later, but not after he sponsored a sports column in the newspaper every 2 weeks called It Happened Here. and it was written by a brilliant man named Fred Hayes, who was a former high school sports writer, used to write for the Forum back in the teens. When Red Blair was playing, he was Red's classmate, and he wrote for the Democratic Banner. Well, a few years after that, when the last Democrat in Ohio died, at least in Knox County, the Democratic Banner no longer existed, and Fred went to work for the Highway Department, I believe, but he wrote these marvelous articles for 10 years, and that's how we did this research. We uncovered things. I kept thinking, who is Red Blair? I'd see his name different places. Pick up a Mount Vernon program at a basketball game, and you see 1918, Red Blair finished his career with 950 points. They only scored 20 points a game. How did this guy score 950 points? He's still number 10. So I started researching him. And I was able to do that because Phil Hobler sponsored this column every 2 weeks for 10 years, written by Fred Hayes. And so if Phil were here, this is what I would have read to him today. We were not going to induct him, we were going to give him an award of appreciation for his 60 years of dedication, and that's why it happened. He came to the museum board one time and said, you know what you need to do? So it may seem like a quirky place to have a Hall of Fame, but I think it's great. You know, it's part of history, and it will always be here, and that's wonderful. Phil Hobler is being honored on this date for your unrelenting effort to see your lifelong dream of establishing this Hall of Fame to enshrine Knox County's finest athletes, coaches, and contributors. And on the back, and those who receive these will have a little different one on the back, but there's a Knox County map with each town that originally had a school, which would include Amity, Bladensburg, and Martinsburg, and Gander. They all had high schools back then. Today, we pay tribute to you for over 60 years of support of youth sports, sponsorship of Fred Hayes' irreplaceable It Happened Here column, which ran for 10 years, and for bringing over 100 NFL players to Knox County to appear on the radio and then sign autographs at your Cadillac dealership. What I should have put in there is after they bought a car from you. Let your legacy reflect that you were the driving force behind the establishment of this hallowed hall. Welcome home, Phil. And the reason I put that last line in there is because Phil left for 40 years and went to West Palm Beach, Florida, living it up down there. But he wanted to come back home, and we're glad that he did. First induction, and we're going to do it chronologically. So Red Blair, if we'd held this originally as scheduled 2 weeks ago, we were going to do it on the 10th. There were some conflicts, so we moved it. If we had done it on the 10th, it would have been precisely 100 years after Red graduated from Ohio State. He graduated June 10th, 1923. Let me just give you a brief thing. You can read in there what he did, but I'll just give you a couple of brief things. The basketball authority, back when Red played, was a former Notre Dame quarterback named Don Hamilton. Everybody looked to him. Don is the guy who single-handedly named the All-Ohio teams. It wasn't done by the press, it was done by him. And Don Hamilton said, Howard Blair of Mount Vernon, this is his sophomore year, by the way, Howard Blair of Mount Vernon can do more things with a basketball than anybody in the state, and that goes for both high school and college. That's pretty powerful. Red's team for Mount Vernon lost in the state finals as a freshman. Back then it was an invitational, by the way. They didn't hold the tournament. They invited about 150 teams to Ohio Wesleyan, and you played till there was only one standing. They lost in the finals. As a sophomore, they got beat on a 60-foot shot at the buzzer by East Liverpool. Don Hamilton, as a sophomore, put Howard Blair, had Red Blair, on first team. And somebody asked Don Hamilton, what about that guy for East Liverpool, their best player? Where do you put him? He said, no place. He played at Antioch College before going to East Liverpool. It's a different world. As a senior, Red Blair lost in the state final in overtime. So his last game, they got that close and lost. He didn't go straight to Ohio State. He enlisted in the Navy for a year before going to Ohio State. He played in the first game at Ohio Stadium in 1922, and that had to be special because the structure beneath all the concrete at Ohio Stadium was made right up here at the Mount Vernon Bridge Company and shipped in by rail. That's pretty nice connection. I'll give everybody a chance here. This is the Genius Quiz. There's only one question. The first game ever played in Ohio Stadium, Ohio State won 5-0 over what opponent? Close. Ohio Wesleyan. The powerful Bishops. Now, I just want to, what a fabulous athlete he was, two-sport man, all Big Ten in both of them, fabulous coach. But I want to tell you something about the man. In 1941, they won every game with a quarterback from Mount Vernon, Ohio. Dwight Bumpus, I think, who later became a coach. And they had converted Dwight from halfback to quarterback just for that year. They won them all. The next year, they continued the winning streak. They won 17 straight. They were going delirious at Southwest Missouri. They were behind in the fourth quarter. They scored and tied it up 14-all. 3 minutes to go. Red, as the coach, calls for an onside kick. The kicker kicks it and recovers it with a tie score, 3 minutes to go. The officials meet and they say, Southwest Missouri ball. Red Blair walks onto the field and says, I don't believe that went 10 yards. And, people were confused. Today they would have chopped his head off. But they remeasured it, they said it went 9.5 yards. Ball to the opponent, they went on and won the game. The opponent did. It was written up nationally. I read the article in Esquire magazine. That was a big deal. There's not many people that would do that, but that ended their winning streak, and he continued to coach there. Red only lived to be 46 years of age. Died on his farm in 1947. His last connection with Mount Vernon, when he died and had a wife and 5 children living in Springfield, Missouri, they shipped his body back to Mound View Cemetery. I went up and saw his grave last night. So there'll always be a connection with Mount Vernon. And his last connection, very briefly, is this, to see if there's any familiar names here. Red knew how his bread was buttered. 20 years after he graduated, he was recruiting from Mount Vernon. At least 17 players came from Mount Vernon. In 1938, Harry Berry, Dwight Bumpus, Kenneth Holmes, Walter Ackerman, Frank Carter, Willie Hull, Hull, Burr Van Ostrand, Lawrence Yoakum, Mont Adamson, Eddie Lohr, Dick Caron in the Hall of Fame along with Dwight Bumpus, Jim Mentis in the Hall of Fame out there, Ty Thomas, Bill Wright, Paul Mentis, also a great football coach, Bob Blackford, and Doyle Snuffy Smith. I don't know what else I could say about the guy. He was loyal to Mount Vernon. Mount Vernon was good to him. We're so proud of him. And luckily, after many hours of research, I located a relative. I located his granddaughter. See, we had to find you 8 people. And I'm convinced some of you didn't want to be found. I'm not going to ask why, but anyway, his granddaughter Ann Collard is here from Springfield, Missouri today. Ann, come up and say a few words about your grandfather.
Well, I actually feel very honored to be accepting this from my family, and my Aunt Susie, his youngest child, is just so sad she couldn't be here today. Her health wouldn't allow it. But, he died when he was 46, so I never got to meet him. But I feel like I knew him from stories in the family, and he was fun and playful. My mom remembers him. His birthday was February 21st, and he always said he was a day older than George Washington. But he was also a great athlete, wonderful athlete. He played more than basketball and football, golf, evidently tennis, you mentioned. There's a picture of my grandmother and him with a croquet mallet. He raced pigeons. He had homing pigeons. My mother loved the memories of going into the pigeon coop. But and he won awards for that. Anyway, anything he did, he was competitive. But he was also a people's person. People in Springfield that knew him just kept him alive for us. At my grandmother's 90th birthday party, at least 8 to 10 of his former players were there, remembering her cooking for them and taking care of them. And he found jobs for them so they could stay in school. Just a wonderful man. I'm really proud. Hope to meet him someday.
Hello, I'm David Greer, another member of the Hall of Fame Selection Committee. I'm a retired teacher from Danville and a DHS alumnus, as is our inductee. Please remember the full details about each of our inductees can be found in a printed program. Hope you've already read it, but please don't read it right now, because I want you to hear things I have to say about Larry Klein. It might have been, had he not had his foot stepped on in their training camp, that we might actually have come to like the New England Patriots. We've never heard of some turkey named Tom Brady. Larry tried out for them and did briefly play in a professional league in Canada. But most importantly, he set several records in college, not just for Otterbein, but in the entire Ohio Athletic Conference, with touchdown passes per career, season, and game. We believe his conference record of 6 TDs in one game still stands. Perhaps the greatest football memory, you listen to this, Jim Wagner. Perhaps the greatest football memory in my mind was in November 1956, season-ending game when he led the undefeated Blue Devils versus the also undefeated Freddies. You know who won, otherwise I wouldn't have brought the subject up. Yep, 26-0. Full disclosure, Larry's oldest brother is married to my first cousin, so I've known him nearly all of my life. I've known his children when they were just children. When you see the picture in the program, it's also part of the plaque in the hall itself, and when you go there after the ceremonies, please go back there. You might wonder where he got that great arm that threw all of those passes. Well, I can tell you, from pitching manure in my father's dairy farm. He worked for us during the 2 summers in 1955 and 56. So I will close with my clearest personal memory of Larry. He was working hard trying to load up a manure spreader in the old-fashioned way. And here's a snot-nosed 10-year-old kid asking him about famous baseball players. I wanted to be a first baseman like Dick Mavis, but I'm not tall and I'm right-handed. So I became, became second baseman. Bobby Avila of Cleveland was a 1954 All-Star, plus the last Cleveland player to ever win a league batting title. So now I'm bothering Larry, asking him who he thinks is going to be this year's National League's All-Star second baseman. Nearly breathless from manual effort and with dwindling patience, yet kindly, through clenched jaw, he replied, "Red Schoendienst." And of course he pronounced it right. Ladies and gentlemen, I delight in introducing you not only the most talented, but the nicest athlete and gentleman I know, Danville's Dr. Larry Klein. You're now a member of the Knox County Sports Hall of Fame. Please stay seated.
I'd just like to thank the Hall of Fame Committee and David for all his kind words. In the past, I probably could put these thoughts down on paper and read through them once and repeat them all back to you without notes. But at 83, that's not going to happen. I made a plan for my life, and sports directed the path I followed. but he directed my every step. Sports was a defining influence, and success gave me the confidence and courage to pursue that path, always in a quiet manner. It opened many doors, even to a career in dentistry. From junior high and high school and college, I was a quarterback or an athlete on many teams, and I was grateful and proud for the success of those teams. But it did not totally define who I was or who I am today. I did try to move on and above all that identity. I was a son, a brother, a child of God, an honor student, a husband, a father, a doctor, and a pawpaw. Proud of every one of our family, and even as it grows, we're delighted and grateful. Let me elaborate a bit. As a husband, Sue and I met at Otterbein over 63 plus years ago, and she was the queen and cheerleader, and I was the quarterback and football captain, so things fit perfectly. In December, we had a celebration of our 60th anniversary, and someone in the group asked Sue if she ever thought about leaving during those 60 years. And she said no immediately, but then there was this hesitation, and she says, "Leave never, murder yes." That did happen. I'm the father of 4 smart, great, and talented children, and 12 grandchildren and 3 great-grandchildren. And it's been a pleasure. Lots of fun. I did pursue professional football. Injuries cut short both attempts and kept me more in line to pursue dental school. Had many interesting experiences. I won't try to elaborate on all those, but had some great experiences. People have asked me several times if I didn't wish I had gone to a larger school than Otterbein, where I'd get more exposure and information, but I thought about that for about 10 seconds and know that Otterbein was a place for me. I left there with the love of my life, a Bachelor of Science degree, which I was accepted into both dental and medical school at Ohio State. I had 0 debt, support at Otterbein and beyond than I could ever express. A lot of help even through dental school. And my only practice, my dental practice, I went in with another gentleman that was the football coach from Otterbein's best friend. So even my dental practice was definitely connected with Otterbein. I thank you all again. I'm honored to be here. Great pleasure.
Good afternoon. Our next inductee is a 1982 graduate of Fredericktown High School. I'm going to apologize to him right off the bat, because I only knew him by Donnie when he was growing up. And I'll still call him Donnie probably forever.
She still calls you that too.
That's good. I've known Donnie most of his life. I knew his family. His father and I started coaching baseball together back in the early 70s. So that's how I got to know Donnie. As he got a little older, I kind of lost contact with him because I was putting together a family. I was working out of town, but I'd heard his name a lot. But what you really want to know about him is he instills the essence of what we try to teach our athletes at Fredericktown High School. Through hard work and perseverance, you can accomplish most things. And I think that's what Donnie did. He worked hard, He put his mind to what he wanted to do, and he did it. And for that, we can all thank him for his accomplishments. So at Fredericktown, he was actually a good athlete, an exceptional athlete, especially in football and track. Track, he still holds the high school record for the shot put. But in college is where he really made his career. He went to the military academy at West Point. And here's what's really important about what he did. All of us that follow athletics, especially football, you know, the linemen generally are the people, the lost heroes, the unsung heroes of the game. Donnie excelled at being a lineman, and that's really, really difficult to do at high school, college, and professional sports. And he did what he needed to do at West Point, and he was recognized for it. But I'm not going to give you a lot of information. I want him to tell you what he's done. So without further ado, Donnie, I'd like to have you come up, and you can tell the people your accomplishments.
So this is going to be 3 minutes. So if you and I have something in common is that we don't play dispassionately, and we love linebackers. I got to know a lot of them really well. I have to wear glasses to see. Hearing aids to hear. I got a replaced hip so I can walk. And now I have my name on a museum wall. But I still get carded when I go to buy good glasses. So, thank you very much for this honor. It's really fantastic to be back home. 41 years ago, I left Fredericktown with Mom and Dad and reported for duty at West Point. And on my bunk were 4 things. A pillow, not a very good one, a gray wool blanket, a overly starched sheet, and this little book called Bugle Notes, which is the handbook of all the cadets given to them each year. And it contains a lot of things. Notes on how to be a cadet, how to be an officer, how to salute, the honor code, all kinds of things. Meant to be something to remember, something to rehearse, something to recite on command, anytime, anywhere. So I'll share with you page 228. General Douglas MacArthur, as superintendent of the U.S. Military Academy, he said, "Upon the fields of friendly strife are sown the seeds that on other fields, on other days, will bear the fruits of victory." That meant a lot to me. Sports to me were a teaching tool. I loved to play the game. I played it hard. I loved everything that went with it. I loved the camaraderie. And I've been fortunate to be part of a lot of really good teams. My first team was my family, with my mother, my father, and my siblings. Second team, some of my classmates here tonight. Bruce, Roger, thank you. Coach Gaspini, first one to teach me how to throw, right? Remember that? His first year coaching, throwing, and my first year throwing. We actually did some pretty neat things together. But that's what, for me, is what that means. I've been part of a lot of really cool teams in sports, in combat, in business, in civil service, and all kinds of things. So that's why the picture that I put in on the wall isn't one of me on a sports field. That picture was taken at hour 102 of the Gulf War. 100 hours into the war, called it quits, whistle blew, everybody stopped, and that picture was taken. Pretty tired at that point, but the things you learn in sports really carries you through. I had absolutely no idea what I was getting myself into when I went off to the academy. I was second in the line of 3 generations that have served the country. My father in Germany in the 1940s, just after World War II, as part of the Marshall Plan. Myself, and now my son Sam, serving out in Seattle right now. But those are the things you learn. Sacrifice, pride, poise, teamwork, how to win, how to lose, and how to prepare. I've taken that with me, and while I didn't know what I was getting myself into, when I went into the academy, I certainly didn't know how well I was prepared by the teams that I had in Fredericktown and Knox County. The sports programs here, the education programs here, is something that we need to be very grateful for, and something that we need to continue to emphasize in all of our youth, school, and beyond school programs. So that's my message. If you're an athlete, keep playing. You're going to learn a lot, and don't be afraid of what's in the future. If you're not an athlete, create the opportunities for people to participate. And that's what I think we all should try to do. So I'm very grateful. Thank you for the opportunity to be part of this great museum. You know, my dad probably would love to be in here for a little while. He was with Cooper's for 40, how long, Mom? 43 years. All right, so he grew up in Cooper's and in Fredericktown. He's been here all his life. And I am so grateful that this is where I grew up, and it's so good to be back home. Thank you.
You know, Larry Klein was a senior when I was a freshman at Danville High School. I was a tall, lanky kid, and the class that Larry was in not only had a good football team, they were good at everything they did. It was quite a class. My brother-in-law was in that class. As Larry was talking, I remembered the only thing I can remember that Larry Klein ever did wrong. I remember the game. It was in Loudonville High School. We were playing basketball. Now, as a freshman, I was tall. I didn't play much, but I sat on the bench during varsity games. Larry Klein was going to shoot a foul with 3 seconds left on the clock, and we were down by 3. Bob O'Brien was the coach. He called his team together. He put me in. And back in those people that are old enough to remember that the lane for basketball was narrow, and they're opposite players. So the shooting team got an inside slot, but on the other side, the other team got the slot. So Bob O'Brien's strategy was, we'll put Larry on the line, he'll make the first one, but he'll bounce the second one off, we'll tip it in, win the game, or tie the game, I guess, because we were 3 down. Larry made the first one. So call timeout, I go in the game, and I'm in this, across the lane from my brother-in-law, one space out. Larry's idea and the coach's idea was, Larry, shoot that shot, bounce it off to Glenn's side, and he'll put it in for 2. Larry bounced it off, but he bounced it off to my side. I skied high for the rebound. Put it back in after the buzzer rang. I still remember Bob O'Brien, as we were walking off the court, he put his arm around me and he says, now Dick, he says, there's a time when you should have tipped rather than grabbed it. So I learned a lot about tipping basketball. Thanks, Larry. J.D. Graham. Those of you who follow high school football and have done it for a few years will know that J.D. was one of the outstanding football coaches in Ohio history. And so he cannot be here today, and I'm going to ask Mike Little to come up, who's an associate and a good friend of J.D.'s. J.D. graduated from St. Vincent High School. Now, for you young folks, probably don't remember St. Vincent had a team, very competitive team. And then when St. Vincent closed, people had to make choices. Some of them went to Newark Catholic, some of them went to Mount Vernon High, some of them maybe went other places. But J.D. went to St. Joseph in Indiana after graduating from St. Vincent, where he was a 3-sport star. Went to St. Joseph's in Indiana, did well there. But within a couple of years, he took over Newark Catholic's football program. Now, Newark Catholic's football program has a history, and I'm going to give you some numbers here because I had my program all marked and so forth. But it says here, JD's Green Wave football program went 220, 30, and 2. 220 wins, 30 losses, 2 ties. He had 4 straight years, 1984, 85, 86, and 7, where he was, where they had a state championship football team, 63-1. After successful coaching at Newark Catholic, he had 1 year as recruiting on John Cooper's staff. I was talking to JD just 6 days ago. We were talking about him not being able to be here, but what he wanted to, message he wanted to convey. In doing that, he told me this story. I believe it's true. He told it to me. He was on this 1 year, he was on John Cooper's staff as a recruiting coach. The last game of the season, they were getting ready to play Michigan. He said that John Cooper met with the athletic director of OSU. Up to that point, John Cooper was 0-4 against Michigan. The athletic director, according to JD's story, contacted Coach Cooper and said, Coach, I know this isn't a good time, it's the day before the big game. He said, if you lose, you're out of here. You can't go 0-5 against Michigan. Now, Cooper didn't tell the staff that. They played the Saturday game, and on Sunday morning when the coaches got together, Coach Cooper confided. He said, well, the athletic director met with me before the game on Thursday and said, if we lost, we'd be out of here. We'd all lose our jobs. But we tied, so we all have our jobs. So if you follow that, that was a tie. He was 4-0-1 or something like that. 4-1. Thank you, John. Thank you. JD, after that 1 year at Ohio State, he joined State Farm Insurance Company. He was very successful of that. His wife, he told me on the phone, his wife was still working, and I think they're at some sort of a outing this weekend. He said Mexico, seems like a good place to go for an outing. But today, Mike Little's here. So Mike, do you want to come up and tell us a little bit about J.D. Graham beyond his wonderful tenure at Newark Catholic?
I have stories. I have a lot of stories here. You gave me
You want to come
45,
around?
50 minutes to talk. So. JD and I go way back. We were friends for over 50 years. And if you know JD, you know that he's very much a competitor at everything. I'm talking about, now we're talking high school years here, but I can remember going down to track meet at Mount Vernon, and JD and I were watching and walking around. Well, true to JD, he sets up an artificial start-stop line. He wants to race me. So that's what we did, you know, we raced, you know. But that's the kind of mentality this guy has. I don't care, you know, he'd set up contests like, how much watermelon could you eat in a half hour? I mean, and then we would try to see who could eat the most watermelon. So JD is a very competitive person. And I'll go back to our 20s. I was the JV basketball coach at Carnington, and he was the JV coach at St. Vincent High School. And we would compete in pre-season scrimmages, and sometimes during Christmas time. And the scrimmages were set up, so you go for 2 hours, which is a reasonable amount of time, would you say? I mean, that's quite a bit of time. But ours would typically extend to 3.5 hours, and it goes back to his competitive spirit. So in the rare moments that I ended up on the winning side of the equation competing with JD, his words were consistent all the way through junior high, high school, and I assume till the day he retired. Let's go one more, and that was JD. That's the kind of competitor he was. JD does extend his apologies for not being here. His wife Kelly is being recognized as one of the top agents for State Farm. They're in New Mexico. Don't feel sorry for him. It's a 5-star resort, so he's enjoying himself. And last week they celebrated their 34th wedding anniversary. You know, I have great respect for JD as a coach and as a player, but more importantly as a person. He's a dedicated husband, a father. He's a man of high principle and high character. He's a proud father of his son Brian and his daughter Michael. And Brian is a graduate of the U.S. Naval Academy, and Michael, a graduate of The Ohio State University. JD, we got to talk a little bit about Mount Vernon, and no matter how old I get, and I can relate to you, Doctor, that's why I've got paper up here too to follow along. You know, it's home. It just gives you a special feeling to come back, and he wanted me to express for him how grateful he was for having the opportunity to grow up in Knox County. He's very thankful for his youth coaches, his youth league coaches, especially Paul Slaughter, and his high school football coach, Matt Medea. These people, he believes, were very influential in the success he enjoyed as a player, as a coach, and as a business executive. He also, and I'm sorry Phil's not here, but hopefully he'll get a copy of this, I want to give special recognition to Phil for the sponsorship he did over the years in Mount Vernon. He gives Phil credit for bringing Babe Ruth baseball to Mount Vernon. He has shared with me the great respect he has for Phil and what Phil has given to the community over the years to make Mount Vernon a great community to live for all. The love of sports from JD comes from his parents, who sponsored him, encouraged him to be involved in all the sports programs in Mount Vernon. As an athlete, he was a 4-year starter in basketball and football. He was the point guard on the basketball team, the quarterback on the football team. St. Vincent didn't have a baseball team, and had they had a baseball team, he had been a 4-year starter there, as he was a great hitter, a pitcher, and a catcher. He's recognized as one of Mount Vernon's finest baseball players. He was a 3-year all-county player in both sports. He's very proud of the fact that during his senior year, the football team that he quarterbacked was 9-1 and Mid-Buckeye Football League champions for the first and only time in St. Vincent history. As was said earlier, he attended St. Joseph College on a football scholarship, received his bachelor's degree, and then went on to Xavier for his master's degree. At 22, I'm going to repeat some of this because some of you need to hear it twice, because we get a little older, our memory slips a little bit. Mine does. At 22, he became the head football coach at Newark Catholic High School. He gives special thanks to Coach Lou Novak, who hired JD as the assistant, and later helped JD become the head coaching at Newark Catholic, replacing Lou. I think it's marvelous, and it's already been shared, but when you talk about winning 87.6% of your games over that period of time, it's phenomenal. It still remains as the highest winning percentage of coaches with at least 200 wins in Ohio. During his time at Newark Catholic, he was the AD, and as was already stated, they won 18 state championships in various sports. His first year as a coach, the team went undefeated, and for the next 6 straight years, they won the league championship. In the 18 years that Newark Catholic was in the LCL, they won 14 times. His first team to win the state was in 1978. His teams were the state finals 11 times, winning 7 of those. 8 years in a row, his teams played the championship game, winning 5 times. His team was the first team in Ohio to win 4 state football championships in a row. His greatest thrill, however, was his last game he coached at Massillon High School, where his team won their 7th state championship. His son Brian was a quarterback, and his daughter Michael was a cheerleader. JD has received Hall of Fame recognition at St. Joseph College, Newark, and the Ohio High School Athletic Association Football Coaches Hall of Fame. After leaving Newark Catholic, JD was selected as the recruiting coordinator at Ohio State University under John Cooper. He's proud that the class that he helped recruit during that time, became the class that won more games than any other class in OSU football history. JD went on to become the agency field executive for State Farm Insurance and retired after 16 years. He's still involved in making a difference as a motivational speaker throughout the Midwest. His love for football continues also, and was a past president of the Pro Football Hall of Fame in Canton, Ohio. It is my pleasure and honor to accept this reward on behalf of my good friend JD. JD wanted me to share his appreciation and gratitude for being selected to the Mount Vernon Hall of Fame, and extends his congratulations to the other inductees. He also wants me to recognize his appreciation for the players he coached and the parents, his assistant coaches over the years, the administration, and the Newark Catholic community, because without that, his coaching career and success would never have happened. Thank you for giving me this time to recognize my good friend, J.D. Graham. Cliff Carpenter is a Mount Vernon High School athlete. He was all Ohio. He went 3 years at Bowling Green, was a starting linebacker. And as I was thinking about Cliff Carpenter, a linebacker, I was thinking about linebackers are used to crushing people. You know, whether you watch college or you watch high school sports, you know, linebackers seem to be those real big boys who have a lot of muscle, who have a lot of speed, and they just enjoy crunching people. Well, Cliff Carpenter is kind of like that. I remember him in high school. I remember him hearing about him in Bowling Green when he was playing up there. But compassion is something you don't think about Cliff Carpenter having, with a man that size. But I heard a story that can convince you that Cliff Carpenter is a compassionate man. Apparently when they were young, the Carpenter family was quite large, and they had an apple orchard at the time. And when the family would get together, the kids would kind of break away from the adults and they'd go out into the apple orchard. They would choose up sides. Is anybody here expecting a call? They would choose up sides. So I can go ahead? Okay. When they got into the orchard, they would choose up sides. Cliff was one of the people who would make the choices, and one of the other family members. Now, the person who told me this was one of the young ones. Now, Cliff was 14 or 15, but a big kid. And he would choose the smaller, younger ones on his team, so that when he was throwing apples, he didn't have to worry about hitting the smaller kids on the team. I call that a compassionate person. When Cliff left Bowling Green, he got interested in softball, slow pitch softball. On your program, by the way, I didn't mention if you have the program, you can read all of these awards, but things that strike out is 5,000 home runs. He was in 2021, Cliff made the all-tournament team in Las Vegas. 65 and over tournament. And just last year, at the incredible age of 66, I don't think Cliff recognizes age, he was the MVP in 3 straight senior tournaments. Now, generally, when people get out of college and they play different sports, it's kind of recreational and keep in shape and that sort of thing. Cliff made a business of being great in slow pitch softball. And as you read some of the others, the Hall of Fames that he is in, those of you who know where Berliner Park is over in Columbus, is a tremendous softball venue. His name is engraved over there. But he's also in the USSA Softball Hall of Fame, the Mansfield Softball Hall of Fame, and of course Mount Vernon Athletic Hall of Fame. So I'm going to ask Cliff to come up here and say a few words about Cliff Carpenter, the compassionate man.
do have to say that when I was a kid, it was a different time, and we didn't pacify each other. You just went out and played all day, and nobody worried about where you were or what you were doing, and they didn't have to. So, yeah, we did have apple fights. That's just the way it was. I would like to thank God, first of all, for allowing me to do the things that I have done. Without him, you know, it took me a while to figure it out, but I would be nothing. So, you know, he's kept me alive. He's kept me around great people. I'd like to thank my wife, who's tolerated putting up with someone that played a game, a child's game, into his adult life. And I'll be 67 years old next week, and I'm still playing, and I still enjoy doing it. I don't enjoy it as much the next day. I'd like to thank all the members of the Hall. I know that it's got to be a tremendously hard job to do this. I can't even imagine all the people that they had. My family, my children, my grandchildren. Never knew how good it was to be a grandpa. It's awesome. You get to play with them and send them home. It's great. First of all, you know, I enjoyed all sports. I liked football. It got me to college free. It allowed me to pursue a career in teaching, and I liked basketball. I played a lot when I got out of college. I didn't play in high school. Played with a lot of friends of mine. I like just about any sport, but I love softball. And I couldn't play until I was 16 years old. And on my 16th birthday, I played in the league down here. It used to be a huge league, men's league. And I actually snuck in and played a little bit before I was 16. But I knew from the first time I played that I wanted to play that game, you know, all my life. And some people are defined by moments that they're not successful. There were a lot of times in my life that I was not successful. You know, I was kind of a chubby kid. Got picked on a lot when I was younger. I was 17 years old when I graduated. So, you know, I went to school with a lot of kids that were 2 years older than me. And that made me better. I didn't whine about it. I didn't worry about it. It's just the way it was. And I'm not really, when I play sports, I'm not a compassionate person. You know, somewhere along the line, it was always instilled in me to win, and I like to win, and I still like to win. I'm not as hard on myself. You know, I used to go out for hours at a time and hit softballs. You know, people just think, well, you know, to everybody here, you're good, and it's just because you're good. It's not. You have to work at it. And I never had a problem with that, and I still work at it. That's the reason I don't like to play as much anymore. I don't like to go hit 4 or 5 times. Just can't do it. But I enjoyed it all. I think you have to make mistakes to be successful. And as an athlete, I made a lot of mistakes. And as a person, I made a lot of mistakes. But, you know, I think all those things helped me to become a better person. The one thing about softball I will say, and I'll make this quick because Paul said I only had 3 minutes. Somebody didn't tell everybody else. But you know, Paul and I played together when we were young, and he was really a good athlete too. He was a good softball player. But softball was, you know, all I put into it, it was really good to me. I mean, I made more playing softball than I made teaching when I played. So, you know, I would teach until softball season came in, and I would get paid to play softball through the summer, and I mean, it was good to me. It was good to our family. Again, my wife was very tolerant. I say our roles have reversed. It used to be she had to tolerate and put up with me, and now, but you know what? It's all fair. And again, I'd like to thank all of my family that has come and all my friends, and I just appreciate this so much. I'm honored to be in the Hall of Fame. Thank you.
Just one thing about Cliff Carpenter, I had a thought when I was sitting there because something Paul Hynum told me. He said, when Cliff set the home run record for Mount Vernon High School, they were using wooden bats. Right? Can you imagine that guy using an aluminum bat? Somebody would have been killed, I'm telling you. In fact, if he played today, they'd make him use a wooden bat, I'm sure, or back up some or something. Tanya Booker is our next inductee, and I was mowing this morning, and because Paul Hynum called me and said, would you induct Tanya? And I said, oh, I researched her, I was just, gosh, wow, I'm so proud. Of course I'll do it. And I was riding my mower and I was thinking, like, you people in Knox County do not know how lucky you are that she was not my daughter. Because if she were my daughter, I'd be flagging you down and saying, hey, did I tell you she made first team All-Ohio? Oh, I did tell you that? What, did I tell you she was a Street and Smith All-American in the magazine? Oh, I told you that. Did I tell you that she won the state championship with her AAU team with Urbana? Call people up, right? Did I tell you she got a full ride to Illinois? Did I tell you that she was the best GPA athlete there 3 years running? Oh, I told you that? Okay. Did I tell you she's a starter this year as a senior? And she was Defensive Player of the Year? Oh, I didn't tell you that? Well, no, hold off. No, you can tell me about your granddaughter later. You know, that's kind of the way it would be. And her mother is here, and I'm sure she's just proud as punch about her. And I found out her mother was Mike Banning's sister. I played against Mike and JD down at the old Riverside Park many, many years ago. That was before they had electricity, by the way. We had to play in the daytime. But Tanya, amazing athlete that she was, and she was amazing in both softball and basketball. She was still a team player, and she insisted that her picture, tried to talk her out of it, she said, no, the picture I want is the one where I'm sitting on the floor and my teammates are behind me because it's a team game. And she's still dedicating her life after 30 years, still working with youth. She doesn't have to do that, doesn't get paid to do that. She wants to do that. It's giving back, and I admire her greatly for that. But to not say something about what a student she was would be a terrible thing. She second in her class at Mount Vernon, and if you look online, and it's a beautiful thing. You know these big bronze plaques that they have, historical markers in Ohio? When you finish in the top 3% of your class at Illinois, they make one of those big plaques called the bronze tablet, and they put your name on there and they hang it in the library for all time. And what an honor that is. Now, there was two things I didn't do when I played, and I was a serious player. I didn't waste any time on studying, and I told my coach, defense just slows the game down. You know, I was a scorer. You got more possessions if you didn't play defense. Hey, give them a few points, so what? Tanya was a Defensive Player of the Year at Illinois, and now she holds a senior management position with the Portland, Oregon Parks Division, and I'm very proud because she's certainly one of our finest athletes and finest people that Knox County has ever produced. Tanya, please come up.
Well, this was quite unexpected. I received a call. I was on my way to actually coach my daughter's basketball team and received a call from my high school coach, Kent Miller, who can't be here today. He's with his grandson, watching him play baseball. But just to hear that there was this honor that was being given to athletes in Knox County, to learn more about the museum on both sides of my family. My grandfathers on both sides, I think, have some artifacts here, and I know everybody that's come in today for this event now wants to spend more time here, so some good advertising for the museum. I was told 3 minutes. I think that's super challenging, so I'll try to keep it to 3, but I think that 3 stuck in my mind, so I have a lot of comments that go in 3. One, I do want to thank John in particular, I felt like we got to know each other. I think he's my long lost uncle now, all the texting back and forth. I want to thank Paul Hynum, who I know cannot be here. And again, it was like a blast from the past. When I was playing, Paul was the coach at Danville, and I remember some of the competitive rivalries we had with some of the players there in Danville, and so that was nice to hear from Paul, and of course, my own coach, Coach Miller. I want to thank him. To me, I take this honor with pride and humility and gratitude. As some of the other athletes have said, we wouldn't have had success without a lot of hard work. I also appreciate several people talking about the joy, because really it starts with the joy of sport. My kids are probably sick of me saying this, but for me, you only come into life with 3 gifts, and that is your mind, your body, and time. And it's what you do with those 3 things. That's all you have control over. And so that's what I focus on. Here in Mount Vernon, it was a wonderful place to grow up. I had some trauma, some challenges, for sure, and sport was, for me, in many ways, escapism. It still is. When I coach, at the end of the game, I'm just like, it's like I'm transported back into reality. I do appreciate all of you that think about statistics and know all the history and moments in the game. I don't remember any of that. For me, it's really about the community. It's about that moment in sport, doing your best, and it's about the teammates and people you meet that have influenced my whole life. And so that's, to me, where the gratitude comes in. All the people who have supported me, who I've had the chance to meet throughout my life, and it starts with my family. My mom, who's here, Rose Cole, supporting me. She grew up at a time when women didn't really have, or girls didn't have opportunity for sport, and kind of didn't understand what the heck I was doing, but still made sure that I got to practice, made sure that I had gear, made sure even when money was tight that somehow we scraped together funding so I could go off and go to competitive camps and play AAU. So I appreciate that. My brother, Martin, I'm not sure if he made it here.
No.
Okay.
He had an automobile accident right
Okay.
before this.
Yeah, so
He's in a state of mind.
Okay, so many of you probably know my brother, Martin Booker. He's back in town and doing wonderful things with the arts program. I grew up in a neighborhood that was mostly boys, and he always vouched for me and let me play sport with the boys. He'd always, no, my sister can play. She can play football, she can play baseball, she can do it. And so I attribute, a lot of my skill development is that I was able to play against people that were better than me and stronger than me and taller than me, and I had to fight my way. I will say, when we played one-on-one basketball, he always made me play defense. He would not let me play offense. And so that might have been why I became the best defensive player. My training with my brother. I also want to thank my children that made the journey from Portland with me, Avery and Zeta there. They both are athletic, and I have really enjoyed coaching them. I have been coaching for over 30 years, and that's because in high school, Coach Miller had us start coaching, and that was a real gift, and I enjoy giving back. I feel like sport is one of the places where I have an opportunity to get back to community, and so I have coached many different teams at all levels, youth, high school, college, and I feel like I'm on my swan song with my own children. All of a sudden people say, you'll do your grandchildren too. If I'm alive, maybe. But Avery and Zeta, really appreciate your support and appreciate you just being here for this moment. My understanding is these plaques on the wall are to honor us, but also to inspire the future as school children come through and think about, where might you go growing up in Knox County, where have people gone with success, and so I'm happy to be part of that. I also want to acknowledge Alan and Carol Coe that are here. Their daughter, Kim Coe, has been my best friend for many years, as well as Mandy. We went to elementary school together, and they've been really supportive. And just really appreciate that you're here. So Mandy and Cher are also here. I went to elementary school with Mandy Jamboski back at the time, Craze now, and played softball and basketball with Mandy and Sheriff all growing up. Sheriff Meyer now used to be Sheriff Frost, Frosty, and just calling it out. But again, I think for the success is great, and to get the accolades, and really just to have those memories. It's about the moments and not the wins and losses. I mean, thinking about the triumphs for sure, and when you have adversity and you come back. But what really strikes me at really unexpected times are those funny times that we had in the locker room, or those chants that we had in the dugout playing softball, and just knowing that you have this shared experience and a community that held us up and supported us. And so I really, again, I'm really honored by this. And it does make me think of a chant that Mandy used to lead when we played softball, when we go for regional tournaments all over, and state tournaments, went to nationals a few times. But we had a chant that was said, "We're from Mount Vernon, couldn't be prouder. If you can't hear us, we yell a little louder." And Mandy has an amazing voice, so we do that. To our parents, probably were like, "Stop." But I could not be prouder to be here for this, and really thank all of you, and thank all of you that are so dedicated to sport and to giving back to community and to honoring those that have had success. So thank you.
I'm Chet Looney. I was a teacher and coach at East Knox for 35 years, and it's my honor to introduce the next honoree. I just met Matt today, so I don't have a lot to say about him, but I did meet his dad several years ago through a mutual acquaintance, and during our conversation I found out that the Burley home was just about 100 yards from the East Knox school district, and the East Knox school bus actually went right by their house. So as a coach, I'm thinking, yeah, an open enrollment or something like that. But anyway, they did the right thing, obviously. If you look at his success, and athletic success, he did the right thing. So it's my pleasure to introduce the second youngest member of the Knox County Hall of Fame, Matt Burley.
I'm going to keep this short. I was told to keep this under a minute. Then, if anyone knows my dad, you can see why they were asking me to. Love you, Dad. Well, first I'd like to thank the committee. This is such an honor to be included with the folks that are on the wall already. And these 7 is an honor that I can't put into words. And it's great. It's great. I'd like to thank Mom and Dad, Mike and Pam Burley. Uncountable days and nights spent at ballparks, practices, games, camps, for teaching me how to win and also how to lose, for pushing me to be the best I could, but most importantly, how to be a good man and a teammate. Thank you. I'd like to thank all the coaches through the years, from Colt football, Little League football, or baseball, all the way to the professional sports. Bill Harris, Bill Pillow, Doug Savage, Roger Buzz Kirkhart were definitely large role models in the growth and success I had. A huge thanks to all my teammates that I had a privilege to play with through the years. None of these stats or records with my name next to them, wouldn't have been possible without them. They deserve to be on here also. Lastly, I'd like to thank my wife. She's made my life out of sports way more successful than they were in. Thank you.
I mean, I'm sitting right there in the front row, listening to Matt speak, and I know what he did, and Paul Hynum told me, and Paul was he's not much to give compliments, if you know Paul. He said, I never saw a guy run over more people than Matt Burley did. And the only thing I can think of, how could a guy with dimples that big be that mean? He probably smiled as he was running over you. Well, it's my honor to induct our last honoree today, and it's from my alma mater, Centerburg. The only other inductee we have from Centerburg back there is Doug Davis, who ended up playing for the Minnesota Vikings. So we would have to consider Amy one of the two greatest athletes that ever came through Centerburg. And there's no question in my mind, all you got to do is look at the statistics. She was the most dominant player on the most dominant team in Knox County history. Her teams went 114-5. 114-5. It's probably absolutely crushing when they lost one, you know. But long before she made the junior national team that feeds the Olympic team, and long before that, she was Ohio State star for 4 years and on the all Big Ten freshman team. Before that, she was a freshman in high school. They went 29-0 and lost in the finals. As a sophomore, they went 29-0 and lost in the finals. As a junior, they had a letdown. They lost one regular season match and got upset in the semifinals. They had one last shot as a senior. They won every match until their last one, and they lost to Division I Bishop Watterson. You can understand that. But they breezed through the tournament. They never lost a set in their first 7 matches. All they got to do the next day after they won the semifinal is to beat St. Henry, who's already won 5 state championships. And St. Henry had won their semifinal 15-1 and 15-4. So they probably played the next day with not a lot of sleep. But they were ready, at least Amy was, because you only had to score 15 points back then. And somebody said, geez, if we win 2 sets, we only have to win 30 points, right? So Amy says, I got 24 of those, which she did. She had 24 kills in the final, and they brought home not only Centerburg's, but Knox County's first team state championship. No disrespect to the 1922 Mount Vernon men's team. That was under the old system when it was an invitational, and it's still a big, big deal. But under the Ohio High School Athletic Association, which was formed in 1923, Centerburg brought home the first team championship. And just before I bring Amy up here, I'm going to, since we did not read to the audience here what this says, I will read this for all 8 inductees. Amy Stevens Crawford has been recognized for extraordinary achievements and contributions to Knox County sports and is hereby inducted on this date. In the back says, welcome to the Knox County Sports Hall of Fame. Our goal is to recognize and honor those who have had extraordinary accomplishments in sports as participants, coaches, or contributors. Consider this: Babe Ruth, Lou Gehrig, Jack Dempsey, and Red Grange all performed over 100 years ago and are still household names. More recently, Billie Jean King, Wilma Rudolph, Babe Dietrichson, and even Serena Williams have achieved equal status as sports icons. None will ever be forgotten, even if their records have been or will someday be surpassed. It is our hope that our local stars, many of whom are no longer with us, will forever be remembered and revered. Their spectacular feats not only stand as a testament to their greatness, but can serve as a goal for young athletes to achieve or exceed. Your name is now etched with the other greats of past generations, and we salute you for being among the greatest of all time in Knox County sports. Amy?
First of all, thank you to the committee, let me go back here for a minute. First of all, I want to thank all the other nominees and people who have been inducted into the Hall of Fame. Your guys' accomplishments are fascinating, and I'm just very excited to be alongside of you all. But I want to thank the Knox County Historical Society and the Hall of Fame Committee for nominating me into the Knox County Sports Hall of Fame. I'd like to say a huge thank you to John Lambert, because he did a ton of research. I can honestly say, I remember Kathy telling me this years ago, that you're going to forget your records. There's things that he brought up to my attention that I completely forgot. And so I just want to say thank you for bringing it back to memory and for those moments. Next, I'd like to thank my husband, Brandon. He's been an all-star today with my little girl, Rayleigh, who's here with us. I can't thank them enough for being here today. And then my mom and dad, Dan and Bev, my grandpa, Emery, and then my aunt and uncle, Coach Kathy and Denny. And I have to say a huge thank you to Kathy, because one of the things is she was our assistant coach at Centerburg, but she made the game fun. And when I coached at Talmadge and then also at Centerburg, I tried to model that same mentality. Yeah, you want to have great athletes, but you want to have fun while doing it. And that also propelled me into why I was successful at Ohio State, because at Ohio State it becomes more of a business. But because of the memories that I had with Centerburg, it made it fun, and I used that to propel me into the college career. I'd like to share one defining moment that I had in my volleyball career that has shaped me into the mom and the teacher and the person that I am today. It was 2003, my last trip to the OHSAA tournament to win a state championship. We were in the Final Four game, and my new skill that I was trying to complete was the jump serve, but it wasn't performing, so I stopped. We did win the Final Four game, but my coaches, my dad, and my teammates asked why I stopped. And I can honestly say I thought it wasn't ready. I thought I was going to fail, and I didn't think I could do it. It was brought to my attention by my coaches and my team that I needed to perform it in order to win the state championship. And I can remember to this day one of my teammates, it was huge, on the bus. We were in the bus, and she goes, "Amy, do the serve. If you fail, we got you." And it was actually Jessica Parker who said that. Then as I'm warming up for the game, my mom came down, and if you know me, I'm very sweet as a person, but when I go to compete, I'm very locked in, and that picture is very, it's a good depiction of how I played. But so for my mom to come down the steps and say, "Hey, I want you to have this sheet of paper," I looked at her like, "What are you doing? Why are you coming down?" And on the sheet of paper that she handed me, it was Philippians 4:13, which says, "I can do all things through Christ who gives me strength." Needless to say, I did the jump serve in the finals, and I got 5 aces out of it. Just with the serve. We won the state championship, and I had a huge relief because it was just a goal that I wanted to finish, not only for Centerburg, but also for Knox County. This moment led me to believe in 2 things in my life. And this is actually a quote by Woody Hayes. You win with people. I desperately need people in my life to cheer me on to my greatness. I can't do it by myself. I've learned that you can't do it alone. So I want to thank my teammates, my coaches, my trainers, my family for their support. But the second thing that I've learned, and this is my defining moment, and it will always be my defining moment, is Philippians 4:13. I can do all things through Christ who gives me strength. My Savior, Jesus Christ, has been my anchor. He gave me the gifts, and he gave me the abilities to play sports. And all the glory and honor needs to go to him. That same anchor now propels me to be the best mom that I possibly can be, the best wife, the best teacher, and the best individual that I could possibly be for him. So I want to say thank you to the committee. Thank you guys for your support. Thank you for this honor. It really means a lot. Go Bucks!
Just before Dick closes here, I wanted the baby crying there remind me of something from years ago. I was making a talk to a much larger audience than this huge audience, and this one baby really got wound up, and finally the mother picked her up and started walking out, and I said, ma'am, you don't have to leave. She's not bothering me. And the woman turned and said, you don't understand, you're bothering her.
Assuming that wasn't planned. We have some pictures here that some of you have sent in, and we are prepared to give those back to you. So if you want to come up afterwards, I'm going to put them here on the table and take those with you. Jim Gibson is the director of the museum, and Jim, thank you for this. Do you have any other messages to convey? He does not.
Congratulations.
Mark Ramser, our president of the museum board, is in the back. Thank you, Mark, for being here, and thank you for the support. Every committee needs a sponsor. I mentioned earlier that we are sponsored by this. The Hall of Fame is sponsored by the Historical Society here, so thank them for all of the work they've done. Jack, we're finished here. I'm about ready to tell everybody they can go home. But any other messages about this weekend? They can get this. It will be. It is recorded. And for all of those I just saw Paul Hynum, committee member who was unable to be here today. Well, everything that was said about you was complimentary.
Okay. I'm sure.
Any other questions by anybody on the committee? Any other points? The committee did a lot of work, and I guess I'd say this to you. After 2019, COVID stopped everything. It brought us to 2022. We actually started last year. We're just now doing this. We have decided, with all the work that was done, we still have many athletes to look at. And we think that by September the 30th, which is Ohio State's bye week, that we will be able to induct class number 3. So those of you who have enjoyed today, we'll enjoy you. Hopefully you will come back, and on the 30th of September, we will have class number 3, which will help us catch up a little bit from our 2019 start. With that, Jim.
Just one more thing. I hope you'll all be able to stay and walk around in the back as long as you like. The restrooms are just to the left of the Hall of Fame. So I just wanted to point that out as well. So thank you all for coming.
Yeah. Could we have the inductees stay for just a minute? We would like to have a group of that, and also committeemen. Since Paul's here, we can get our all committee together. So if there are no other comments, thank you all. Those of you inducted into the Hall of Fame, it's been a wonderful experience for all of us. By the way, one other point. At the beginning of this committee, we determined that if you played before 1950, you were what we called old-timer. So when we refer to, is he an old-timer or not, it doesn't include you and I. That's why I use that 1950. But anyway, as we look forward in the future, we will have a group of old-timers and a group of young. That's all. Thank you very much for coming.